Hi, I'm a sand recap, and this is a movie to get. The Martian. After being stranded on Mars, an astronaut must use his own resourcefulness to send a signal to Earth that he is still alive and can survive until a rescue team can reach him, despite his team believing him to be dead.
I'm alive. Obviously.
The Hermes crew will be at the shuttle Ares 3's landing site on Acidalia Planitia, Mars, in the not-too-distant future, including navigator and chemist Alex Vogel, botanist Mark Watney, IT expert Beth Johansson, pilot Rick Martinez, flight surgeon Chris Beck, and Commander Melissa Lewis, are collecting samples prior to returning to the 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐬, their living facility. The crew finds out that a storm is coming. Commander Lewis decides to abort the mission due to the severity of the storm and its strong winds. As the crew in their suits heads toward the MAV, the ship that will take them back to the orbiting Hermes, Watney argues for waiting it out and comes in last. They are surrounded by strong winds and sand gusts. Watney was knocked out of the crew's view when a broken satellite dish struck him. Lewis tries to lead the others to Watney, but the storm is too strong and there is very little visibility. Without Watney, they enter the MAV once more and take off. Martinez, the pilot, barely prevents the rocket from falling, but the launch from the planet succeeds. NASA Director Teddy Sanders holds a press conference back on Earth to announce that Mark Watney has been deemed dead despite the fact that the Hermes crew was successful in leaving Mars. On Sol 21, Watney awakens on Mars after the storm has passed. He returns to the habitat station because his oxygen levels are rapidly declining. A portion of an antenna that is still sticking out of his abdomen has impaled him. The antenna and his own blood sealed the suit just enough to prevent the majority of his air from entering. Watney pulls the antenna out, uses forceps to remove a broken piece from the wound, and then staples the wound shut in a painful procedure. He sits down to write the following in a video log: he is alive, but he is unable to communicate with Earth or Hermes. The next manned mission won't launch for 4 years. In addition, he has nearly a year's worth of food in the habitat designated for him and the other 5 crew members, or a little more if he rations. As a result, Watney comes to the conclusion that he must cultivate food for 3 years on a planet where nothing grows. He is fortunate in that he is a botanist and comes up with a plan to grow potatoes. Sanders just arrived back at NASA in Houston, Texas, from a memorial service for Mark Watney, where he talked about Watney's passion for exploration. Sanders hears from Mars mission director Vincent Kapoor about getting satellite time to find Watney's body. Sanders says that it would be a political and financial disaster for NASA to broadcast images of Watney's body because the satellite feeds are public. After finding evidence of activity in satellite images of the Ares 3 site, engineer Mindy Park later meets with Kapoor. The rover has moved and the solar panels have been cleaned. In order to demonstrate to them that Watney is still alive, they call in Annie Montrose, director of media relations, and Sanders. After a few sols, Watney planted potatoes inside the habitat using Martian soil and vacuum-sealed packets of crew feces as fertilizer. He burns rocket fuel made of hydrazine because the potato crop needs more water. Water is a byproduct of the reaction. He makes a moderate explosion on his first attempt to ignite the hydrazine, which damages his clothing and hair. NASA does not use pure hydrogen, according to Watney, due to this explosive tendency. He decides to use a rover to reach the 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐬𝐬 crater, which will be the landing site for Ares 4 in 4 years. While he continues to work on his food supply, he modifies the battery-powered rover by adding solar cells and an additional battery because it cannot cover the entire distance. The pot of plutonium that was used to transport the crew to Mars in their initial spacecraft serves as a heat source in the cabin to conserve battery power. Using the rover, Watney tries to locate a Pathfinder probe that stopped communicating in 1997. He intends to use it to contact NASA. After he takes the old probe out of the sand and spreads its solar panels to charge the batteries, he finds that it is still functional. He is able to inform NASA that he is still alive by using handwritten signs for the camera on the Pathfinder. Kapoor and his colleagues at the Jet Propulsion Lab, who built the Pathfinders, have brought another Pathfinder out of storage, gathered the engineers who worked on it, and made it work again, allowing Kapoor to receive the message. They are able to communicate with Watney by first panning the camera of the Mars Pathfinder to point at yes or no signs when Watney asks if his signal is being received, and then by panning around a hexadecimal clock that Watney has scratched out on the ground around his Pathfinder. Both of these methods allow them to communicate with Watney. This system is used by NASA to instruct him on how to hack the operating system of the rover so that it can send text back to Earth. Kapoor regretfully replies that the crew has not been informed when Watney, finally able to type his messages in chat, asks how the Hermes crew took the news that he wasn't dead.
In response, 𝐒𝐲𝐧𝐫𝐞 uses profanity. The story of 𝐒𝐲𝐽 becomes a global sensation.
His communications with NASA are recorded, and he takes a spacesuit selfie with the Pathfinder's camera at the request of PR director Annie Montrose, which she dislikes because she can't see his face.
Mark cannot remove his helmet near the camera, which is outside the 𝐒𝐲𝐵,
says Kapoor to her. The crew of Hermes, on the other hand, has been quietly returning to Earth and communicating with loved ones for the past few months. Mitch Henderson, the flight director of Ares 3, gets in touch with the crew to let them know that 𝐒𝐲𝐽 is still alive and that NASA has kept it from them for 2 months to keep them focused on their mission. Although Henderson informs them that 𝐒𝐲𝐽 has repeatedly emphasized that it was not their fault and that they had reason to believe he was dead, the news only fuels their rage and guilt.
NASA determines that they will be able to reach 𝐒𝐲𝐽 by Sol 868.
In slightly more than 900 days, the 𝐒𝐲𝐵's rations and the food he is growing will run out.
Sanders is concerned that the error margin is too small.
𝐒𝐲𝐽's situation on Mars begins to deteriorate when the habitat's worn-out airlock explodes, ejecting him from the airlock while he is inside and causing his helmet to crack and leak. After sealing the cracks with duct tape, he stumbles back to the habitat to find his potato crop frozen and dead. He now estimates that he will only be able to survive for slightly more than 300 sols with less food, or slightly longer if he rations.
NASA and JPL put in a lot of effort and quickly send a probe to 𝐒𝐲𝐽 to resupply him.
The probe's trajectory shifts significantly shortly after launch, causing it to veer off course and explode in order to make their launch window. 𝐶u and 𝐒𝐚𝐝, directors of the Chinese National Space Administration, witness the explosion in China and discuss offering their classified booster rocket technology to NASA for the launch of a supply craft.
𝐒𝐚𝐝 asks 𝐶u why NASA hasn't asked for their assistance earlier, and 𝐶u reminds him that NASA wouldn't know about this top-secret program. They decide to contact NASA and offer their booster rocket in the interest of international scientific cooperation.
Rich Purnell, a brilliant but eccentric astrodynamicist, comes up with a strategy to accelerate the returning Hermes around Earth, giving it a boost of gravitational pull, and send it back to Mars to get 𝐒𝐲𝐽.
The Hermes will be refueled by the Chinese rocket for its extended journey.
Henderson secretly sends the plan and Purnell's course calculations to the crew, despite Sanders' veto because it puts the lives of the 5 Hermes crew members in danger and will extend their mission by hundreds of days. The crew discusses it. They are aware that the secret arrival of the plan indicates that NASA management has rejected the concept. They believe that if they return to Mars, Lewis and Martinez, 2 members of the military, will be tried for mutiny, and the 3 civilians will never be allowed to fly a mission again. They all agree to go back and vote for 𝐒𝐲𝐽 after Lewis calls for a unanimous vote. The Hermes computers are hacked by Johansson to prevent NASA from taking control, and they change course and send Houston a cryptic message. Rich Purnell is a missile man with a steely eye.
Sanders is enraged at Henderson because he believes Henderson sent the plan to Hermes. Henderson neither denies nor will confirm his actions. Sanders says that NASA should keep flying, but Congress is very sensitive to public opinion, and if Purnell's plan doesn't work, the bad press will probably cut NASA's budget for years.
When the mission is done, he asks Henderson to resign. After that, he has no choice but to make the announcement that NASA is sending Hermes back to Mars to rescue 𝐒𝐲𝐽. Mars is home for 7 months. 𝐒𝐲𝐽's teeth are decaying, he has lost a lot of weight, and he has grown a lot of facial hair. He has begun to lose faith in his own survival and rescue. He makes a video log and asks Commander Lewis to tell his parents what will happen to him.
𝐒𝐲𝐽 follows the instructions sent to him by NASA to make substantial alterations to the rover with bewilderment. He removes the rover from the Ares 3 site and packs it up, having been there for 461 sols, and turns toward the Ares 4 MAV, which was dropped on Mars long before the Ares 4 mission began. It's a 3,200-kilometer drive across a Martian landscape that has no roads and is uninhabitable.
He sleeps for 13 hours each day and uses solar panels to recharge the rover's batteries. He argues that Mars waters are legally international during his excursion. That is, it is subject to maritime law because no nation on Earth can claim it. He will become a space pirate if he takes control of the MAV because he has not received explicit permission to do so from NASA and will not be able to obtain permission until after the flight. He wants to be known as Captain Blondebeard. In addition, Mark expounds on the fact that he is the first person to see the Martian landscape that he traverses, and he appears to be in awe of it. They return to Mars after the Hermes has circled Earth and gathered the supplies. NASA and the rest of the world are looking forward to it. With a delay of 12 minutes, no one on Earth can assist via radio. To make the MAV light enough to reach Hermes orbit, 𝐒𝐲𝐽 must remove 5,000 kilograms of it. He gets rid of most of the seats, all of the navigation and control systems, and the nosecone airlock, which is the most heavy and important structural part, with a tarp. 𝐒𝐲𝐧𝐫𝐞 is launched into orbit by Martinez, who controls the MAV via remote control.
The MAV cannot reach the Hermes spacecraft because it rises too low.
In order to maintain their speed and still reach 𝐒𝐲𝐧𝐫𝐞, Vogel creates a sugar and oxygen explosive that can be made quickly to blow the front hatch and cause air to escape. Lewis herself makes the decision to use the tethered 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐬 suit to reach 𝐒𝐲𝐽, but she is unable to get close enough.
𝐒𝐲𝐽 uses the escaping airjet to propel himself toward Lewis by puncturing the palm of his glove. He misses her because he has very little control. However, he collides with the tether, which, as a result of his momentum, wraps around Lewis and himself, allowing the crew to reel them in. People all over the world cheer when Lewis tells NASA that they have 𝐒𝐲𝐽.
The crew gives 𝐒𝐲𝐽 a hug and jokes about how bad it smells because he hasn't taken a shower in a long time. 𝐒𝐲𝐽 begins his first day back on Earth, approximately 1 year later, as an instructor for future astronauts. He jokingly states that he does not want to discuss that aspect of the mission again after telling them about his struggle on Mars and confirming that he did in fact grow food using his own excrement. He instructs them that, in the event that circumstances deteriorate, they can either accept their fate or begin resolving issues because doing so is the only way to survive, by overcoming each obstacle one at a time. We see the characters years later during the closing credits as they watch Martinez, the commander of Ares V, launch. Along with 𝐒𝐲𝐽 and 𝐒𝐲𝐽, Kapoor, Montrose, Park, and Sanders are keeping an eye on NASA. Henderson has retired, and he and his son go golfing. Vogel is at home with his family while Lewis watches at home with her husband. Beck and Johansson have tied the knot and are keeping an eye on their newborn child from the hospital.